Military, civilian, high-level athlete, little kid playing Little League, it doesn't matter. We all struggle. Life is not without struggle. There is no absence of struggle. But how we choose to struggle and who we choose to struggle with will define our path forward. Nobody wants to hurt, but hurt is inevitable. What we can control is our response to those emotions. What do we all want as human beings, right? We want to belong to something. We want to believe in something. We want to strive for something. That is blind to how much money you make, your degrees, where you live. None of that stuff matters. We don't learn from experience. We learn from reflecting on experience. Because if we learn from experience, if that's how we learn, none of us would ever make the same mistake twice.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Next Season Podcast, episode 26. And oh man, have I got one for you. Today I have the honor and the privilege of bringing you a masterclass in living a life completely aligned to one's values. When I built the ambition pillar for my coaching program that I have with my athletes and the content of this podcast, it's based upon lessons directly from this man. His name is Johnny Martin. He's coached and mentored Fortune 1 executives, entrepreneurs, Tier 1 military operators, professional athletes, entertainers, including world record holders and some big name celebrity. I'm fortunate to be able to count him as a mentor and a coach, as well as a friend. And after this conversation, I'm sure you'll agree. Get out your notepad, y'all. Here's Johnny Martin. Johnny Martin, welcome to the Next Season Podcast.
Yeah, man, happy to be here. Thanks so much for bringing me on, man. It'll be fun.
Absolutely honored to have you. I've gotten a chance to know you a little bit and consider you a mentor, a friend, a brother from another mother, and just honored to have you in my life, and certainly honored to have you on the podcast here today.
Yeah, man. It's every time I can meet with like-minded people and chop it up about the things that we love the most, and hopefully gives the folks that are listening a chance to reflect on their own journey. That's a win for me. So I'm honored to spend some time with you, and I'm ready to dig in.
Yeah. So Johnny, you've got an interesting arc to your career, and probably more than I even realized having multiple conversations with you and many conversations with you. But there's I think there's probably stuff underneath the surface there. But before we get into that, take us back to the beginning. Where'd you grow up? Where are you from?
Yeah. So born and raised in Western Massachusetts, a suburb of Springfield, Mass. Most people nationally know Springfield, Mass. as the birthplace of basketball. That's where the Basketball Hall of Fame is. But I grew up in a suburban town just outside of Springfield called East Longmeadow. I'm one of two kids. I have an older brother. His name is Stevie, and raised in a nuclear family in the little suburbs of Springfield, Mass. Both my parents, just hardworking blue collar folks. My dad worked in Springfield, Mass. with youth and adolescents started as a teacher, and then finished his career as a counselor in urban, very, very urban, very poor middle school. And my mother worked part-time as a dental hygienist, but it was my brother and I, just the two of us. Our world as kids was just centered around the neighborhood when actual neighborhoods in this country still existed. And we were outside from the time the sun came up till the street lights went on, and the neighborhood raised us all. Some of my closest friends to this day came from that neighborhood. So yeah, awesome upbringing. I really surrounded by love, very strict parents, very strict. My dad, old school Irish Catholic, Vietnam era. My mom, only child, 100% Polish parents. Her parents dropped out of school in 7th or 8th grade and took factory work just to make it in this country. So my upbringing was very rooted in really firm expectations for behavior. There was no playing around in my house, but we always felt loved, lots of love, lots of support, and a really, really cool, great upbringing. A lot of fun.
Yeah. So the strictness, and you give me an example of something that was there, there was a no-go on that.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's tons, but and it really formed a lot of, looking back, it really forms a lot of our our behaviors and choices we make as adults. But here's a great example. Even before my brother and I were anywhere near old enough to work, today's generation on Saturdays and Sundays when you don't have school, it's not uncommon for the kids to sleep as late as they want to sleep and then wake up slowly and either get on their video games or, look at the TV or scroll through their social media all day or all morning long. Like in my house, that was whether you had old enough to have a job or not, you had a job in our home every weekend, and you were up when our parents were up. And if they were working to make the home better and the family better, then you were doing something to contribute to that. So like I had responsibilities in my home as young as I could remember. If my dad was cutting the grass, I was following my dad with some sort of yard tool to pick up the grass and the leaves. If my dad got up early in the morning to take a ride to go to the wholesale fruit and vegetable store because that's where they were cheaper, and that was at 6 a.m., then I was going with him. There was no like, you guys just lay around and be kids and we'll take care of everything that exists in the house. That did not exist in my house. Another example, we were just talking about this the other day, but I was a young kid, just in early adolescence. I went out with my older brother. I definitely made some poor choices that night socially and came home in a way that was not acceptable to my parents. I think I was about 14 years old at the time, 13 or 5, about 14. And I remember that because I just finished school and we were just starting the summer. So that weekend was the start of the summer. And I made a poor decision with my older brother. And when I got home, they were up waiting. There was no yelling or screaming, although my mother, she was not happy. But 5 o'clock in the morning, the next morning, my father woke me up. He told me to get dressed. He drove me into the city to this giant fruit and vegetable store. And he walked me in at 5 o'clock in the morning and he said to the owner of the store, who was a childhood friend of his, "Hey, are you looking for any help for the summer?" And this guy said to my dad, "No, I'm all set right now." And my father looked at him and said, no, you don't have to pay him. But he wants to be a man and he thinks he's a man. And men work. And so he's going to work. And so I worked in that fruit store that summer every day except for Mondays from 5 in the morning until 5 at night. And that was my punishment. The only thing I was allowed to do, I couldn't go out with my friends. I couldn't have a summer to hang out with friends. I worked every day. And the only thing I was allowed to do outside of work was go train for football. I could go to workouts and I could go to captain's practices, but otherwise I worked and I was home. Yeah, they didn't mess around, man.
Obviously, as a 14-year-old and experiencing that and the social, the impact of that, and you see your friends out playing and stuff, was there a rebellion? Did you have that rebellious streak in you, or did you get it?
Well, no. Well, two things. One, I got it. I absolutely got it. But there was another, for me, there was another primary reason I didn't rebel. My older brother, who's my hero and my idol today, my older brother's journey was not smoothly paved, man. And he had a really, really turbulent adolescence, early adulthood, and even into later adulthood. But even as kids, we, as you know, and I don't want to get too psychological, but there are roles within families that we adopt, right? Subconsciously, we adopt those roles. And because of the amount of volatility that my brother's journey was bringing to our family, I very quickly realized as a young kid that I was not going to add to that volatility. And so the decisions I made, that certainly, the one I highlighted was certainly not the only bad one I ever made. When you know me pretty well, I'm a pretty intense dude and live life for life. But I was very well aware of how hard my family was working to try to help my brother navigate his path. And I did not want to add to that volatility. And so, yes, it was a great reminder that every choice we make in this world has a consequence, but also recognizing that I wasn't going to add to their plate because they were working really, really hard to try to help my brother.
You touched on something here that that I think is important. And it's just, as I was thinking about how I wanted to, have this conversation with you today, we all have chance encounters, right? So like and we just talked about this a couple of minutes ago before we started recording. There's where you are now, right? And you can look back at 14 years old. There's your starting point. Maybe it was earlier, maybe somewhere around then. There's your starting point. And there's Johnny Martin in 2025, right? We all have chance encounters along the way and situations that open doors and
No doubt.
things that you're right. That those experiences in life of going to work a fruit stand at 5 o'clock in the morning that you don't realize oftentimes, and sometimes it's years later, that they got you on the path that you're at or where you're at right now. What are some of those key moments that led you to where you are and what you're doing professionally? Or was this something that, 14, 15-year-old Johnny says, that's what I want to do and I'm going to go down and I'm going to take the steps? Or like, what was that path like for you to professionally where you are now?
Yeah, I love that question. It's an awesome question. Well, I firmly believe that we are all a totality of our experiences, right? Some have a greater effect on us than others. And it is really only when we have deep and pointed reflective conversations that we really can peel the layers of the onion back and point to certain micro moments or situations in our lives that may or may not have put us in the position that we are in today. But when I look at the work that I do now, right, working with other people, which I know we'll get to as the meat of the discussion. But for me, this idea of service to other people was always at the forefront of what I loved to do. Uh, how I do that now and the arenas that I do that in now are very different. But looking back on those experiences, I was very fortunate, starting with my father, to be around my hero and my idol. My father worked in one of the poorest neighborhoods in the state of Massachusetts. He did it for 35 years, and I never heard him complain once. Never once did I ever hear him come home from work and complain about his work. In fact, it was just the opposite of that. I saw how much love he had for the kids and the families that he was working with. I saw how much he cared about them. I saw how much he poured into them, even when he didn't have to and without pay. So my father was a living, breathing example for me of what connecting passion with purpose really looks like. And so from my early years, he also did a great job of exposing me to people, places, and things that were very different than how I grew up, right? He didn't ever view socioeconomic class or how much money people had or what kind of car they drove or what neighborhood they lived in with the quality of the human, right? I oftentimes was dropped off at parks, my brother and I, when my dad would do extra work in the summer in those neighborhoods. My brother and I were dropped off at those parks in those neighborhoods to play with those kids, to compete in sports with those kids, to mix it up with those kids. And back then, you don't realize why. I didn't realize why my dad was doing it, but I also never thought like, well, they don't come from what I come from, or they live differently than I live. And so we weren't even given the chance to think about that. It was like, I've got work to do in the city. I want you guys to be around some really special human beings. Yeah, they might not have a whole lot, right? But man, what do we all want as human beings, right? We want to belong to something. We want to believe in something. We want to strive for something. That is blind to how much money you make, your degrees, where you live. None of that stuff matters. And I learned that at a very young age, but I didn't learn it because somebody told me it. I learned it because I experienced it. So yeah, he was a huge influence. I mean, he's gone now, as you know, but I hope my work is even in part a reflection of the man that he was. This was a guy that nobody outside of our area probably has ever heard of or would ever know about. And when he died, the people that ran the funeral home, who have been in the business for generations, that it was the most crowded wait and calling hours they've ever had in the history of their business. Just to give you an idea of how many lives this dude touched. right? Like it was, so he was that guy for me. He was that guy. And then a lot of other strong influences, some coaches that I had, a lot of the men in the neighborhood I grew up in. My heart for service 100% came from my father.
Wish I had a chance to shake his hand.
Dude.
We could talk for an hour just on the objective evaluation almost of one's life from the response at a funeral, right? The true celebration of life, the happiness that people have and the gratitude that people have. Obviously, upset that the person's lost, but just understand that they had an opportunity to be in that person's life. And I just feel that energy. So we could talk for an hour on that. We could talk for an hour on what you said about, he told you this, or other people have told you things, coaches have told you things, but you don't realize it until you experience it. That's a conversation in and of itself.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
to, to me, that piece is the core of real learning, right? We are often taught that. I'm sure you, as a son, a husband, a father, a coach, we have heard and have told people thousands of times, you're going to learn from this experience, right? We don't learn from experience. We learn from reflecting on experience, right? Because if we learn from experience, if that's how we learn, none of us would ever make the same mistake twice, right? And all of us as human beings, we are flawed. We are flawed beings. We've made the same mistakes over and over and over again. But it's through that reflection, it's through the conversations that I've been able to have about my dad and other mentors and the folks that I'm so blessed and honored to work with every day. That's how we learn, right? We learn through reflecting on those experiences. And for me, reflecting on my journey, as you asked, at the start of the question, it all started with my dad. And then I was really fortunate to have really great men and women in my life that helped reinforce that path for me all along the way.
and that's one of my favorite, and I have it written down in my notebooks from you. That's one of my favorite messages and reminders from you is we don't learn from experience, we learn from reflecting on experience. And then I've taken that and I've tried to apply it, and I actually stole something from Alex Ramosi, which is all about how do we know that we learned something, right? So we can have the knowledge, right? You can tell your son, this is what's you do X and here's what's going to happen, right? There's action, there's outcome. And you could say that till you're blue in the face, but unless he absorbs it and reflects on it and then applies it, and that's the thing is true learning is the same exact situations as before, same environment, same situation, but different behavior
That's right.
from you.
100% right. Well, I mean, when you really look at the whole, even the neurology and the neuroscience behind behavior change, right? You and I are in the business of helping people look at their behaviors, their actions, their daily work in different ways, right? I don't believe that I'm the expert on anybody. I believe people are the experts on themselves. But when you look at the science of behavior change, the only way it can truly happen is by doing exactly what you just said, by being in the same or different environments, faced with the same decisions, and doing something differently. But not just doing something differently once. Real behavior change is doing something with intention repeatedly, right? The clearest example for people, and this is the one that will resonate, or probably will resonate with lots of people, is that, well, I really want to start working out. Right. I want to start working out. Going to the gym one time doesn't mean you've changed your behavior. It just means you've gone to the gym one time. When you work with athletes, getting a session in one time doesn't mean you've changed your approach, your behavior, your mindset around anything that you're doing within or around baseball. It just means you've done something differently one time. The only way we do it repetitively is by doing it every day correctly. And when given a choice to do this new thing or that thing that we've done 1,000 times, the only way to get up there through neuroplasticity and change the behavior and to undo this thing that we've done 1,000 times, is to do this new thing, this correct thing that we're looking to change our behavior thousands of times. When given that choice, we have to choose the other one. Right? But where do our brains take us? If we don't pause to make that new choice, our brain's job is to protect the vessel. It is going to take us back to that old behavior, those old stories. That's what the brain is going to do. So, yeah, you have to be intentional, right? How does what I'm about to do align with what I say matters most?
So we live on a property that has woods, and at the back end of the property is a creek. Okay. My wife, I'm outdoors. Like you could take me outdoors. I'll go walk back there. I'll go back to the creek all the time. And it's a steep slope down. So it needs a path, right? To get, my wife's comfortable. She doesn't like the snakes that are back there and everything like that. And what you're talking about is, and this is how I equate the long-term potentiation and long-term depression, right? Anybody has created this pattern of, okay, I don't feel like going to the gym. I don't feel like training. I don't feel like working out. I feel like eating this thing that I know I shouldn't eat, but I'm going to go at one time. Well, that one time is not going to clear the path. Your path has been created. The easy path, whatever you want to call it, has been created over years and years of repetition. And it's cleared that path in your brain as the neural pathway. And in order to undo that, you have to carve a new path.
That's right.
So whether you got to take chainsaws to it and clear a path, you got to take a bulldozer out there, or you just got to walk like game trails, thousands of years or hundreds of years of game trails along the same path. You got to create those new neural pathways. But like you said, it's not going to get done one time.
That's right. That's exactly right. And behavior change neurologically works exactly that way. You said it beautifully. It's a great example. You have to carve a new path, because otherwise our brain is going to take us back to the path of least resistance. What is safe and comfortable, right? Well, safe and comfortable does not always mean healthy, does not always mean productive, does not always mean joyful. It just means normal.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's normal is different, right? The folks you work with in different areas, the folks I work with, people would be shocked at what normal is for a lot of the folks that I worked with. And as you know, and athletes know, like behavior, that's why behavior change is so difficult. That's why people stay where they're at. Not everyone.
It's also and it's also the brain's default is to protect us.
Of course.
Right?
It's exactly right. It's exactly right. But our experiences and how we've responded to those experiences, that's what tells the brain what keeping us safe looks like. I work with men and women that their safety, 1,000%, comes from the most chaotic environments that any of us could ever imagine. And the thought of peace and tranquility and slowing it down, that is the opposite of what safe looks like for many of the men and women that I work with. And so the challenge is, how do you take this lived experience? How do you take this totality of the experience over 10, 15, 20, 25 years and work to bring some peace and joy in an environment that is the polar opposite of where you thrived because you had to, for survival, you had to do something a very, very detailed way, in a very specific way. And now we are telling you, hey, you don't have to redline anymore. You don't have to live in conflict and chaos, and you don't have to do that. And I know you don't want to do that, but changing that is really difficult. Really difficult.
Yeah, your fuel, and every time I say you, I'm talking,
I'm tracking.
That clientele, that the people that you work with, their fuel is cortisol, adrenaline, dopamine, constant dripping or gushing into their system, into their brain, and that's how they operate and that's how they thrive. Like you said, at some point, that engine burns out, whether it's forced or they realize they can't anymore
That's right.
and they got to make a change and you help work them through that. What can you share, Johnny, about some of the groups and arenas that you've worked in? Because you work with elite top performers as well as everyday Joe Schmoes like me, right? What can you share about some of the groups and arenas that you work with,
Yeah.
just to give a sense of
Yeah.
your experience?
Appreciate the question. As you know, I don't consider anyone an everyday Joe Schmo, certainly not you. We are all human beings on a beautifully unique path. And so I don't view working with one person really any differently than I work with any other person. I've been really fortunate throughout my career. Started off in public schools, just like my father did. Started off as a teacher and a football coach. Spent 6 years in the classroom as a teacher. While I was in the classroom, I got my first master's degree in educational psychology and school counseling. And within the high school I was working at, there turned out to be a position opened up. The folks there that were in charge of deciding who was next in that position knew that I loved the community, knew that I had poured into that community for 6 years as a teacher and coach. They offered me that position as a counselor. So I transitioned from the classroom to the counseling office, kept coaching football. But at that time, about 10 years into my career, brother, I started to get really, really interested in doing a lot of one-on-one and group work around um, strengthening cultures within teams, right? You're very, very aware of this. You spent part of your career doing just this, right? Strengthening the individuals while also working to strengthen the team and the ethos around the team and the culture around the team. And I just became fascinated by that. I had a really great opportunity about 10 years in to start working with some high performing athletes, high school and college athletes. And I started working with them one-on-one and in small groups all around mindset, all around the things that you and I are not just talking about now, that we've talked about for a really long time, right? The stories that we tell ourselves become our truth. And so I was really curious about these guys and gals' stories, what they were telling themselves about where they were now and where they wanted to go, and really honing in on not the success of the athletes. Because folks in our line of work, we don't pay as much attention to how great they are at what they're doing. We pay much more attention to how we think they can get even better, right? And so I started working with some pretty young high school, college-aged baseball and football players. Now, I'm not a baseball guy. I mean, played Little League baseball, but that's really where my career ended, right? But was way more interested in the mentality behind their journey. And they were very responsive to the work that I was doing with them. And so just kept pouring in and learning and pouring in and learning. A couple of those guys ended up playing professionally, and again, was very fortunate, just kept showing up, trying to work as hard as I could. And they started referring me to other folks. At that point in my career, I stood up my own business. So I was still working in the school system, but I stood up my own business where I was doing a lot of one-on-one mental performance coaching, lots of work with adolescents that may be struggling a little bit, but not the traditional therapeutic route. Just wanted, families would reach out and say, hey, we heard you do a good job of developing rapport with kids. You got a background with adolescents and sports. And so I started working one-on-one. Fast forward, I ended up doing some leadership development work with college teams. So I'd go speak for a half a day or a day to college teams around team building and, really, me, but really honing in on what I call the no matter what's. Like, if we are not centered in on our values, then everything, when things get tough, will fall apart. But if we can identify the no matter what's in our life, they answer our toughest questions. So I really use that as a platform for a lot of the work that I did. And then, again, still working in the school, but as a side business, doing a lot of consulting with not just high performing athletes now, but corporate folks. Then I had a couple of friends in that were breaking into the entertainment business, had a chance to start working with some of those folks. And then for the last 6 years, By accident, 6 years ago, I was in a gym in New York City with a friend of mine who was doing business with the owner of not just a really high-end gym in New York City, but also a global supplement company. I didn't know any of this at the time and really didn't care. I was just in there to work out with a buddy. On that day, that's really when my life professionally changed, really was about 6 years ago. I was super content, happy with the work I was doing, young kids, healthy family. I was pretty content, but the day I was there at the gym, they were doing a professional development for the staff at the gym. So it was all hands on deck. The whole staff was there. And the owner of the gym, I didn't know this at the time, but he was a veteran. He was an Army veteran. When he got out of the Army, he became uber successful in the health and wellness space. His name is Matt Hesse. And Matt was doing a professional development with his staff, and he had two combat veterans speak at that professional development. One of them, who ended up becoming just an unbelievably dear friend of mine, he was blown up twice in Iraq. And, I've never been in the military, but my father is a veteran, Vietnam era veteran. My brother is a veteran. And I was just drawn to their stories, but not from a place of pity at all. I don't believe in operating that way. It wasn't from a place of pity. It was from a place of profound respect and admiration, because what I heard so much in their stories was the struggle. But what impressed me the most was the mindset around the struggle, and what I really learned from them on that day. Military, civilian, high-level athlete, little kid playing Little League, it doesn't matter. We all struggle. Life is not without struggle. There is no absence of struggle. But how we choose to struggle and who we choose to struggle with will define our path forward. And so in listening to those guys, I felt compelled to learn more. For me, in that moment, it wasn't good enough just to say thank you for your service. I wanted to figure out how I could learn more about this foundation that my now boss and dear friend was creating. And that's really when my career trajectory changed. And so I started volunteering to work at his camps. He was running fitness and wellness camps for transitioning veterans all around the country. I did that as a volunteer for about a year and a half, just to go in and do mindset work with them, teach them skills around empathy, talk to them about vulnerability, but really more to learn. Like I was going back to school. I was going back to school to learn about a subsection of human beings, the 1% that raised their right hand, that I realized very quickly were our country's greatest asset. Like hands down, the American service member, they have so many skills that people spend hundreds of thousands of dollars in college to try to learn. But these guys and gals had to learn them and learn them quickly every single day to be effective at a mission that they call a zero fail mission, right? If a batter goes 1 for 4 in a game or 0 for 4 in a game, yeah, it sucks, right? It sucks, but it's not the end of the world. And they're going to get another at bat. Well, what I was learning is that these cats, if they don't go 4 for 4 every day of the week, they may never get another at bat. Ever. And it changed my perspective on working with people, and it changed my perspective on what it really means to pour into not just your craft, but what real leadership, camaraderie, team really looks like. So I was offered a position with this company, or with this foundation. I walked away from everything I had worked on for 21 years. My school, my coaching football, my side business. I walked away from all of it. I just said, I'm all in. I'm all in. And so that's what I do now, man. I oversee a national nonprofit called the Veterans Future Foundation. And my role is National Director of Graduate Performance. And I make sure that these dudes and gals, when they come out of service, if they get connected with our foundation, We make sure that they're empowered from a mental performance perspective. We help them with career advancement, and we help them continue learning, continue education in any way they see fit. So that's the population I've worked with most specifically over the last 5.5, 6 years. And then within that time frame, you keep showing up and working hard. I've had a chance to work across Fortune 1 companies in leadership development, executive experiences, professional sports teams, done some work with professional combat sports, and also done some work with WWE and their talent. So it's, when I look back, it's pretty cool because I've touched so many different arenas of folks, adolescents, adolescent athletes, correctional facilities, professional athletes, entertainment, the American warfighter. I've had a chance to dip my toes into quite a few different populations, and it's been pretty cool.
I would say so. I would say so. And one of the things, I mean, I could just sit and listen to you share that all day. But and we've talked about this before, the stories, the anecdotes, the ways that you describe these things, the analogies and metaphors, and the specific real situations might be different across those different groups, but the principles are the same, are they not?
We're all human beings, man. We're all human beings, right? And so what do we all want out of this journey, right? Nobody wants to hurt, but hurt is inevitable. Nobody wants to struggle, but struggle is inevitable. The struggle of the millionaire 100 times over that I have the chance to work with contextually might be different than the struggle of the 19-year-old service member that I'm working with, or 25-year-old service member that I'm working with. Contextually, the struggle might be different, but what the struggle feels like is the same. And so you are 100% right. We are all human beings. And because we're human beings, it means we are emotional beings. And when we learn how to process these emotions in healthy ways, not run from them, not avoid them, give them a name, meet them head on, process them, but then work from a place of what we can control, right? There's no dismissing emotions. There's no ignoring thoughts and feelings. They flood our brain. Research anywhere from 40,000 to 100,000 thoughts and feelings every day come in and out. We can't control that. What we can control is our response to those emotions. That is a human condition. It doesn't matter what you do, where you're from, how much money you make. You feel that the same way I feel that. The difference is how we respond to those feelings. That's the place I play. That's the work I love.
You're damn good at it.
Trying to get better every day, man.
And that's the thing is like, yeah, you see this, you're working, you just listed it off, right? You're working with top performers, lead performers, people that we look up to, people that we aspire to be like in some situations. And again, they're humans, though they're flawed, but we admire, we respect, we, sometimes chase that.
We chase it too much. We chase it too much,
oh, yeah.
in my opinion.
Oh, yeah.
Because what we do is we rob ourselves of our ability to maximize our story.
Let's go there. So when I sat down and I really started to define and structure how I would coach and how I would frame the program that I have, the coaching program that I have, and then obviously the podcast as well to be about, and how I would communicate it and structure it. And it's evolved and it will continue to evolve. But I kind of build out, here are the pillars that I know that I want, right? And we obviously have to make it memorable and market it well. So I had talent, effort, ambition, and mindset. Those were the 4 pillars. Because at the end of the day, those are the pillars that lead to success on the field in any sports team, but also in any business team, in any military unit. Those are, you switch some things out, but at the end of the day, it's talent, effort, ambition, and mindset. So you have to have the talent and the skills and continue working at them, right? There's your baseline. You have to put in effort. You have to hustle. You have to have discipline and toughness. You have to have ambition, right? You have to have goals and a target, which is where I want to go next. And then you have to have the mindset piece, which you know this better than most, if not everyone else. And it's agency and gratitude and choice point prioritization, grit and resilience, and kind of the mental toughness stuff, and curiosity, competitiveness, courage, growth mindset, all of that in the mindset pillar.
Sure.
But within that ambition pillar, I try to help athletes realize that you're creative player, right? That your identity, right? And the ideal version of you. Here's where you are now. There's this ideal version of you that you want to be, and not chasing anybody else. You are you. So you can't create, I can't be Johnny Martin,
That's
right?
right.
I am me. There's attributes and there's things, there's characteristics, and there's things I can learn from you and try to apply them in my life, but they have to be me. Habits and behaviors, right? When I work with baseball players, I think about a pitcher, and a pitcher has a repertoire of pitches, right? It's their pitch selection, right? So some guys have fastball, curveball, changeup. Some guys have a slider, various pitches, right? And so you have a repertoire. That's your values. Your pitches, Johnny, are going to be different than mine.
Yeah.
That's my values. That's my no matter what. You also have a plan for a hitter. So how you attack a hitter and your ideal outcome. That's your vision. Then as the hitter, you have pitches that you're looking for, and you have a plan for your at bat. So there's a zone, your strike zone. Here's what's going to be called a strike. Early in the count, I'm looking for a pitch that I know I want in that spot, the type of pitch and the location of that pitch, right? So that's my standard. And I know I got to, in 2 strikes, I got to expand the zone a little bit. And so I got to protect. But then I have boundaries as well, right? I'm not going to chase. So standards are what you expect from yourself and others. Boundaries are what you'll accept from yourself and others.
Sure.
That's how I framed all that. I say all of that, Johnny, right? To say this. I learned this all from you. The winter of 2023, 2024, when I met you and started to learn from you and have these conversations with you, me in my late 30s was really starting to figure out who I am now, where I want to go, and what are the values that no matter what's, as you call it, what are the standards and boundaries that I'm going to have? And at the end of the day, if everything else falls apart, I still got me.
Mm.
That's enough for me. Can you riff on this a little bit, thinking about identity and vision and values and standards and boundaries? Where would you go with that?
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. Our work together sort of got the wheels in motion for you on this. For me, whether it's in my personal life, professional life, or in clients or groups that I'm working with. And again, everybody has a different place by which they start, right? When people create what we call the blueprint for their life and their journey, there isn't one right place to start. But if you look at the most successful among us in any way that that's defined, whether teams, corporations, individuals, depending on how you define success, that also is different for everybody. It's been my experience in 25 years of doing this work that when you start with the no matter what's, which is what most people never even think about to begin with, but when you start with a values-based approach to living the life, that will, just as it did for you, Kevin, and you expanded on it in ways that most people won't, but that values work that you started doing, right? That vision and values work that you started doing helped you create standards for yourself and your approach, your family, your work, right? That helped set those standards. Your values also helped create those left and right limits, those boundaries that I will allow only so much in, because anything that I invest my attitude and energy in is an investment of time, our most precious commodity. You and I are exchanging an hour of our lives today for this conversation. We have made the choice to say we will give up 1 hour of our life for one another, and hopefully for the benefit of other people that we never get back. If you have a value of time and this conversation presents itself, you can immediately say, how does having this conversation align with my value of time? because I am choosing to give up an hour of my life to spend with you and you with me. It also helped, it sounds like, really shape this identity construct that you share with clients and athletes, right? And I know we talked about it a little bit offline, but to come all the way back around, for me, I keep it very simple when I start with clients or groups. We have to start with your values. And most people, as you know, have never even done a values exercise before, ever. If we sat in a room with 10 people and you and I were facilitating that group and we say we're going to start with a values exercise, or better yet, brother, if we said, listen, you have to share with us right now your no matter what's, and there can only be a max of 5 and a minimum of 3. What would happen is the first person that we put on the spot would share the first 3 that came top of mind without any substantiation behind why, and everybody else would follow suit because they've never done this work. It's also why we live in a world and we have clients and players that you hear the term all the time, what do you stand for, right? But when we work with clients with this values-based work, the more they do this work, man, they will die on that hill. We live in a world, unfortunately, where values are created for us. Your business creates the values and you operate under that value system. Your team has a value statement and you operate under those set of values. Your boss has a set of values and you operate under those set of values. But what we've never learned to do is create these values for ourselves. What we've never learned to do is to do what you just shared and to say, no. How I operate my life comes from these pillars or these lanes: vision, values, standards, boundaries, and identity. But where did you start? You started with, I'm going to get real clear on my no matter what's. So we could riff on this all day, but what I would keep coming back to and keep challenging is that there are no standards to create without your values. What are the standards? Against what? Right? Standards are created so that we walk through this life in a way and it is aligned with our values. What difference do boundaries make? Boundaries against what? Boundaries against or for the things that I say matter most. Shaping of identity towards who I am today and who I am trying to become. Against what? It is only when we create those 3 to 5, hey, these are going to answer not only my toughest questions of the day, but these are going to help shape the human being I am trying to become. And the more we revisit them, the better we will get at living in a way that aligns with them. Are we going to be perfect all the time? No. I am as flawed as the next guy. Screw up all the time. Not the A husband of the day every day, but want to be. Not the A father of the day, but want to be. Not the A coach of the day, but want to be. And the only way I can sharpen the sword in those areas is by going back to what I say are my no matter what's. Because then when we're faced with decisions, those decisions have to align with what we say our values are, right? If they don't, then we haven't been honest with ourselves about our values, or we haven't spent enough time really honing in on them. A lot of times, as you know, people will create values for their life, their business, their teams. They'll create them because they sound good and feel good. I don't care about any of that shit. I want to know what it looks like on a Tuesday morning at 10 o'clock when this stuff hits the van. The only place it matters is when it's tested in real time. And where we see this the most, values conflicts, where we see it the most is not when things are going well. We see it in the most high performing populations when things are not going well. And then we use cliches like, hey, man, trust the process. Well, that's great. That's great if you are invested in the process. And so again, you and I could go on and on all day long. But for me, when I look at all that you shared, which by the way is beautiful, like I never get that complicated, because what I want to completely challenge people on all the time is, okay, you've talked to me about your week. You've talked to me about your decisions. Now you're going to share how they align with what you say matters most. And if I challenge you to die on that hill, are you going to die on that hill? That's values-based living. That's why it's so hard. It is so hard because we're going to screw it up. But the more we lean into the things that we say are no matter what's, the less of those screw-ups we're going to have. The more we're going to trust the process because we're part of creating it.
Your process.
Yes. Our process, but also I work for people too, right? I have to answer to people as well. And when I'm told, hey, you just got to trust the process, I have to lean in honestly and have the tough conversation and say, you have to let me know what the process is. Because I've got to find a way to weave that process into the things that I say are mine no matter what's. If I can start making the connections between the process that you say is so important to the things that I say are mine no matter what's, man, we could dance well together. But if I don't know what you stand for, you don't know what I stand for, and you're telling me, well, you just have to trust me because I said so. No, I have too much agency over my own life just to say, yeah, I'll trust you because you say so. No.
I don't know if you remember this, Johnny, but a while back we were at a spot and we had a very special person that we were listening to, and she described this as, this idea of stress. We're like, we need stress in our life to grow, right? You don't grow without stress. We have to have it. And that's acute stress, right? Chronic stress is obviously can be negative, can be bad. And then there's distress. And the way that she described it was, when you are living outside of your values, you are perpetually in a state of distress. And the physical and mental and emotional impact of that is significant. And so to me, that's reason number one why get started with your values and go from there.
Yeah, that again is another awesome example, a really powerful example. What I love about what you shared on the front end is that we have made this term stress so commonplace that it's lost its impact. But in real time, everybody uses that as their excuse to get nothing done or to not change or to be overwhelmed by the world around them. That is, as you put it, that is distress. Stress, by definition, the term stress, very simple definition. It's our body and mind's reaction to everyday demands. If you were to open a dictionary and look up the definition of stress, it is going to say, or something very similar, your body and mind's reaction to everyday demands. Well, it makes perfect sense why people hole up and recluse, but without that, how are we ever tested? How are we ever challenged? How do we grow without navigating what every day is going to throw our way, right? What we've done is we've created a world where we just say, if anybody has any stress, well, it's just anxiety, right? And we've given that term. And I'm not discounting anyone that has a diagnosis of anxiety. Many folks that I love very much. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is we label everything instead of viewing it as a very necessary part of our own growth and development. If we've exhausted every resource that we can, to mitigate our body and mind's reactions to everyday demands, if we've mitigated every resource, if we've tried everything, if we've tried new things, if we've recreated our values and really honed in on what matters most, in many of those cases, this acute stress that we all say we're feeling all the time would be extremely mitigated. But what we do is we conform to the label, and then we keep, every time something happens to us that we define in that bucket, we just take another drop of gas and we pour it on the fire. If we take that same stress and we not run from it, not try to mitigate it, not try to push it away, but if we face it head on, give it a name, identify it, see it. I feel you right now. I see you right now. Make it the most beautiful person in the room and ask them to dance. Now we have control over the situation. The situation does not have control over us. Does that mean I never feel stressed? No, I feel stressed all the time. I have 2 kids. I have a home. I have cars. I have a wife. I have conflicting responsibilities. I have stress all the time. But I give it a name. I know what I see you. I know you are trying to make me feel this way. We're going to dance, and I'm going to lead. If I know it's not going away, and I know fighting against it is not going to work, if we really just simplify it, right? Simple but not easy. But if I know it's not going away, it's coming every day. We know that. We agree on that stress is coming every day. We also know fighting against it does not work, not sustainably, not over the long term. What other logical, healthy choice do I have? To me, the only logical, healthy choice I have is to acknowledge it and step right into it.
Acknowledge, accept it for what it is, and then
That
act.
word, but Kev, that word in and of itself is so powerful. Acceptance. That word in and of itself is so powerful.
Yeah. Because
Accept
it's
it.
not agreeing.
That's right.
Right? It's accepting.
You know, people say this is what it is as permission to do nothing about it.
Right.
See, I
Right.
don't view the term that way. We use it all the time. It is what it is. It means I'm just supposed to agree with it. No. But when you have that level of acceptance, well, man, now I can choose. Now I can choose. And there's so much power in choice. When we pause, we could take that pause and say, okay, this is the situation before me. Running away from it doesn't change it. Pretending it's not there doesn't make it go away. It is before me. And it wants to control me. No, I don't accept that. I accept the situation. I control the choice. Right? The big difference between the two. Big difference between the two. And that's where the hard work really has to happen, right? Simple, but not easy. I mean, if we were just to rewind 5 minutes, I think anybody listening would agree that stress is going to happen, and avoiding it or running from it or dismissing it does not work. So what are our other choices?
Acknowledge it, accept it, and act.
Yeah, that's where the power of our journey comes from. That's where growth comes from. Why most people stay stuck is it is what it is. That's not what that means. That's not at all what that means. What that means is some situations, as they confront us, some situations are completely out of our control. Okay, I can accept that. I can. But what can I control? And that's where I'm investing all of my time, attention, and energy. only on what I can control.
Well, Johnny, speaking of time, I want to be respectful of yours as much as I can. This has been absolute gold,
Fun,
and
man.
it's also been an absolute honor.
For me as
Um,
well.
if you're open to it, I would love to have you back because I do have some other questions I would
Good man.
want to ask you. You know, thinking about some of the work that you're doing with the veterans and identity and that transition, and maybe we get into that a little bit, and how that is relatable to athletes because I know you work with athletes as well. Talking about staying aligned to values, right? Do values shift and can they evolve over time? And talking about redefining vision and all those things. So if you're open to, I'd love to have you back and continue to pick your brain a little bit on this stuff.
Be honored, man. I'm happy to jump on with you anytime. Always.
Let's
Appreciate you
do it.
having
Let's
me
do it.
very much, man.
Where can people find you if you want to be found?
Yeah, dude, it's interesting. I can give you my email, but I'm in a position now. I'm very thankful for it. Bro, I don't do social media anymore, man.
Love.
I don't do it. It was robbing me of my time, attention, and energy. And so, I mean, you can certainly find me through Veterans Future Foundation. You can certainly find me on LinkedIn, but my email is johnny@veteransfuture, one word.org. Johnny@veteransfuture, one word.org. But in terms of finding a page and adding followers, doesn't align with my values right now, brother.
You're living your values. Your boundaries are there. The work that you guys do with the veteran community is so awesome. Just complete gratitude for that.
Thank you.
I have some military in my family as well. Actually, my wife just did an event called the Four Chaplains event. She's an event coordinator. She planned it. She's been doing that for a couple of years. Had a chance a couple of years ago to have Travis Mills speak, and what a
Sure.
powerful, I mean, just incredible human being he is.
Yep.
This past week, she was there, and there was a veteran of World War II, Korea, and Vietnam,
Brother, there's
and
not many of those left.
that's what we were saying. It's like how small of a list of living human beings are left that have that experience, and the most genuine, humble, happy person you'd ever meet. The man is a hero.
Yeah. Just curious how old he's got to be close to 100 years old.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
So they recognized him and just powerful. And
As they should.
um,
As they should.
if anybody out there has any family members that are transitioning from the military, check out the work that Johnny does with the organization. I'll be sure to link that information in the show notes and everything like that. So, but no, Johnny, thank you for coming on. Thanks for what you do. Thanks for being an inspiration and a light and a pillar in my life. Appreciate you so much. And let's run this back soon.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. Thank you for saying that. I'm happy to do it.